Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The corporate party was in full swing, glittering lights and clinking glasses setting a dazzling scene at the top floor of the downtown high-rise. As I wove through the throng of familiar and unknown faces, the cool air was punctuated with laughter and the murmur of 100 conversations. I was there ostensibly to represent our company's marketing team, but the dull echo of generic party music left me disengaged, my thoughts lingering instead on the weekend plans with my wife, Sarah. Navigating towards the bar, I ordered a whiskey and leaned back against the counter, observing the revelry. It was then that a man approached, his smile a tad too wide, his eyes alight with an effusive energy that seemed to thrive in such gatherings. "You're Sarah's husband, right?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "No, actually," I lied smoothly, curious about this stranger who so confidently assumed a connection to my wife. He didn't notice the deception, or if he did, he chose to ignore it, swept up in the thrill of sharing. "Ah, never mind then. I'm Greg," he clapped me on the shoulder, not waiting for my introduction. "You know, there's something exhilarating about forbidden fruit," he continued, leaning in conspiratorially. "I'm seeing someone here, from the office. It's a secret, of course. She's married, too. Can you believe it? The risk just makes it all the more exciting." The room seemed to still around me, my hand tightening around the glass. "Really? That does sound thrilling," I managed, my voice a controlled calm. Greg, buoyed by my feigned interest, didn't notice the cold fury settling over me. "Absolutely. It's Sarah," he said, chuckling, oblivious to the storm he was stirring in my chest. "She says it makes her feel alive. We've been careful, but the thrill of getting caught, it's something else." I nodded, my mind racing as I pieced together the fragmented signs of Sarah's recent late nights and unexplained absences. The pieces of a painful puzzle were clicking into place, each revelation etching a deeper fissure across my heart. "Excuse me," I muttered, setting down my glass with a clatter that drew a few fleeting glances. I needed air, space to think away from the suffocating heat of the room. Greg's words echoed mockingly in my mind as I stepped into the cool solitude of the balcony. The city spread out beneath me, a tapestry of light and shadow. I felt a divide within me, as vast and glaring as the contrast between the illuminated streets and the dark corners they failed to reach. The hurt was rapidly giving way to a colder, sharper desire for retribution. This night had started as a mundane corporate obligation. It was now the beginning of something else entirely, a plan, not yet fully formed but inevitable as the night's end. Sarah's betrayal wouldn't just stand, it demanded a response. I would dismantle the life we had built with the same secrecy and precision that had marked her affair. The revenge would be fitting, thorough. And as the night whispered on, I knew one thing for certain: by the time I was done, Sarah would have nothing left but the memories of what she had destroyed. As the party buzzed behind me, the outline of my vengeance began to take shape, each thought sharper than the last. The following morning dawned gray and unremarkable, the city awash with the gentle hum of a routine Sunday. Yet, inside our quiet suburban home, the atmosphere was electric with the storm of my brewing plan. Sarah, oblivious to the seismic shift, hummed softly as she prepared breakfast. The mundane clatter of dishes sounded unusually harsh as I sat at the kitchen island, watching her every move through narrowed eyes. "Morning, love. I thought we could go for a hike today, clear our heads," Sarah suggested, her voice light. She placed a plate of scrambled eggs in front of me, her smile warm but unaware of the cold front sitting just across from her. "That sounds perfect," I replied, my tone even, masking the turmoil underneath. It was essential to keep appearances. After all, deception was a game two could play. "Let's eat quickly then." As we ate, I plotted. Every detail of Greg's confession the night before replayed in my mind, forming the blueprint of my revenge. After breakfast, as Sarah went upstairs to get ready, I took my phone and quietly stepped into the garden. Shielded by the tall hedges, I dialed Greg's number, which I had secured from his overshares. "Greg, it's me," I said when he answered, my voice a controlled calm. "We met last night, at the party." Ah, the connoisseur of thrilling stories. "What's up?" he chuckled, unaware of the storm he was fueling. "I need to see you." "It's about Sarah," I said, a slight edge creeping into my tone. "Can you meet today?" "Sure, I guess." "Is everything okay?" There was a noticeable shift in his demeanor, a hint of caution now tinting his words. "Not exactly," I admitted, stoking his curiosity. "It's better if we talk in person." "How about the park on 5th in an hour?" "All right, see you there," he replied, his voice laced with unease. At the park, I confronted Greg. "So, you find it exciting? Toying with another man's wife?" The accusation hung heavy between us as we stood secluded by the draping willows. Greg's face paled, realization dawning. "You're her husband?" he stuttered, regret washing over his features. "Look, I didn't mean." "Save it," I cut him off sharply. "I don't care for your excuses. What I want is for you to help me." "Help you? How?" His confusion was palpable, his earlier bravado dissolving into fear. "I want details. Everything about the affair. If you ever want to be forgiven, you'll help me expose her," I demanded, the resolve in my voice leaving no room for argument. Faced with no choice, Greg nodded, a defeated slump to his shoulders. "Okay, I'll tell you everything." The details poured out, each one a serrated blade to my heart but necessary for the precision of my plan. By the time we parted ways, I had everything I needed. Sarah's betrayal would be repaid in kind, her secrets laid bare. Returning home, I found Sarah waiting, her earlier cheer replaced by a slight frown. "Is everything all right? You seem off today," she inquired, her brow furrowed in concern. "Just tired, that's all," I replied, my smile tight but convincing. "Let's still go for that hike, shall we?" As we walked through the serene trails, I kept up the facade, all the while knowing that with each step, I was walking towards an inevitable end. The quiet of nature around us belied the chaos set to unfold. Today, I had gathered the ammunition. Soon, it would be time to strike. The serenity of Sunday's hike remained an echo in my mind as I laid the groundwork for the coming storm. Monday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. Sarah left for work with a kiss and an unsuspecting smile, her spirits high. I watched her car disappear down the driveway, and then, with a resolve hardened by betrayal, I set my plan into motion. First, I contacted a private investigator I knew through a mutual acquaintance, one reputed for his discretion and effectiveness. I arranged a meeting over coffee in a nondescript cafe across town. "Mike, I need your skills," I began, laying out the specifics as he listened intently. "Surveillance on my wife. I want proof of everything, photos, videos, times, places. The lot." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "It's a standard request. You sure you want to go down this road? It can't be undone." "I'm sure," I affirmed, my voice steady despite the turmoil that churned beneath. "All right. I'll get you everything you need," Mike assured me, closing his notebook with a snap that sounded like finality. With the investigator set to start, I turned to the digital front. At home, I sat down at my computer and began to sift through Sarah's online life. Armed with passwords from a marriage built on trust, now broken, I accessed her emails and social media. As I combed through her messages, the extent of her deception became painfully clear. Love notes, plans for secret rendezvous, all documented in glaring betrayal. Next, I crafted anonymous tips to send to her workplace. If all went to plan, they would spark an internal inquiry. Her career, built on the reputation of integrity, would crumble under scrutiny once her affair with a colleague was unearthed. By the afternoon, the gears of my revenge were in full motion. I paused, the weight of my actions heavy, yet the drive for retribution pushed me forward. The doorbell rang unexpectedly, pulling me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find Greg, his face anxious. "I need to talk to you," he blurted out, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "This is getting out of hand. What are you planning to do?" "Sit down, Greg," I said calmly, leading him into the living room. "You're part of this, whether you like it or not." Greg looked visibly shaken. "I told you everything, didn't I? Why involve the workplace? This could destroy her." "That's the point," I replied coldly. "She destroyed our marriage. It's only fair." He ran his hands through his hair, distress written all over his face. "There's got to be another way. This won't just hurt her, it'll hurt you too." "Maybe," I conceded, "but it'll hurt her more." Greg stood up, his frustration palpable. "I can't be part of this. I thought I was just giving you closure, not helping you wreck lives." "You were a part of this the moment you touched my wife," I shot back, my anger flaring. "You're already in this deep." He hesitated at the door, turning back to me. "I'm sorry, truly. I never wanted any of this." With that, he left, the door closing softly behind him, a stark contrast to the chaos he left in his wake. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, I sat back. The first threads of my plan were unraveling Sarah's life. But this was just the beginning. There was more to come, and no turning back now. The days that followed were a meticulous orchestration of downfall. The private investigator, Mike, delivered evidence that was both damning and indisputable. Photos, videos, a detailed log of meetings, each piece a nail in the coffin of Sarah's double life. I stored them, a growing arsenal for the final confrontation. By Thursday, the ripple effects of the anonymous tips had taken hold at Sarah's office. Whispers of an internal investigation began to surface. When she came home that evening, her face was drawn, eyes clouded with a storm of her own. "We need to talk," she said as soon as she walked through the door, her voice tremulous. I led her into the living room, the images from the investigator laid out on the coffee table like a grotesque exhibit. Her steps faltered as she took in the scene, her hand flying to her mouth. "What is this?" Her voice was barely a whisper, her eyes darting from the photos to my stony face. "Evidence," I stated flatly. "Of your betrayal. Not just to me, but to everything we built together." She sank into a chair, her face pale. I can explain," she stuttered, but the fight seemed to drain out of her as she looked at the undeniable proof of her duplicity. "There's nothing to explain. It's all here. You and Greg," I said, my voice laced with contempt. "It ends today." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, her composure breaking. "I made a mistake. Please, can we talk about this?" "Talk?" I scoffed. "Like you talked to Greg?" "No, there's no room for that. Not anymore." I told her about the private investigator, the anonymous tips, and how her workplace was now scrutinizing her every move. Desperation flashed across her face, a wild, grasping terror as she realized the extent of her unraveling world. "Please, don't do this. Don't destroy everything I have," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "You did that yourself," I replied coldly. The doorbell rang, punctuating the moment with ominous timing. I opened the door to reveal Greg, looking harried and anxious. Behind him stood two more figures, Sarah's boss and a representative from her company's HR department. Their faces were stern, the final players in this drama I had directed. "What's going on?" Sarah cried, standing to face the new arrivals. Her boss held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "We've received serious allegations about your conduct. We're here to discuss these matters formally," her boss explained, his voice formal and cold. The meeting was a blur of corporate speak and legal terms. Termination of employment, breach of trust, consequences of actions, phrases that cemented her professional demise. Greg was caught in the crossfire, his career collateral damage in my sweeping revenge. As they left, Sarah turned to me, a broken figure shrouded in betrayal and loss. "You did this. You ruined me," she whispered. "I just revealed the truth," I countered. "You did the rest." She looked at me, the love that once warmed her gaze replaced by a hollow emptiness. "I'll never forgive you for this," she said, her voice empty of warmth. "And I'll never forgive your betrayal," I responded. With that, she turned and walked away, her steps slow and defeated. I watched her go, feeling neither triumph nor satisfaction. The house, once filled with laughter and love, echoed with the stark, hollow victory of revenge. In the end, the destruction was complete. Sarah's career and reputation were in ruins, her personal life shattered. Greg, too, was a casualty of the war I waged. As for me, I remained in the shell of our home, the silence a constant reminder of the cost of vengeance. The chapter closed on our marriage and the life we once shared, a tale of love turned to ash by the fiery wrath of betrayal and retribution.